Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And today I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about the scandal, the big scandal ongoing with Kanye West. Last night he said some things that were pretty hurtful to a lot of people, including myself. And I want to tie that into astrology. We're going to look at astrology and we're going to explore the topic a bit more, mostly because, Ye's making it a big issue. And so a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people are confused about, uh, you know, Jews in general, the Jewish question. Some people don't really understand um, what it means to be Jewish. They think it's about religion like Christianity, and it's not, because um, uh, Judaism is primarily, Judaism is a religion, but being a Jew is a ethnicity. It means you're born a Jew, regardless of what you believe. You don't have to believe in any religion. And so that's the confusion. Um, and so I'll just talk a little bit about this. If your mother's a Jew, then you're a Jew, regardless of your religious association, affiliation, right? And when Hitler murdered the Jews, he didn't ask a single one what they believe in. They could have been ultra-Orthodox religious Jews, or they could have been atheists, basically, or anywhere in between. If your mother was a Jew, Hitler was going to round you up and murder you and your family and everyone of your friends who are also Jewish, right? But first, he was going to torture you, enslave you, beat you, starve you, work you to death, and then murder you, right? So yeah, that's the first issue that a lot of people don't get. They think it's about ideology, and they bring in ideology, and they're like, "Oh, well, Jews hate Jesus," which is not true. Well, I mean, every Jew is going to have a different thought about their relationship to Jesus, whether they believe whatever they believe. Maybe some believe that, in the same thing Christians believe, or, maybe they call themselves Christian. I don't know. It's different. It's different for each one. We're all individuals. It's not a monolith. We don't get together and decide as a group what we're all going to think. What are we going to do, Jews? Let's all get together and figure it. No. None of that happens. I've never heard anything like that happening. I mean, if Jews belong to a particular synagogue or whatever, then they might have some similar ideas based on what the rabbi is teaching, but that's basically the same with everyone, everywhere. But Jews are pretty independent-minded. In Judaism, there's actually a lot of encouragement to question. You're allowed to question in Judaism. It depends, well, I guess, whether you're talking about Orthodox Judaism or not, or secular, I guess it's called, but like regular Judaism. You're allowed to question things, and you're allowed to have lively debate and disagreements. Versus in Christianity, it's really frowned upon, I guess you could say. And I'm not an expert, but like you're not allowed to question in Christianity. You either believe what the preacher, priest, whatever is telling you, whatever they're called. I guess they're different things. Or you get out, right, and start your own denomination. That's why there are many different denominations. You disagree, you start your own branch. In Judaism, you're allowed to disagree, and you don't even have to believe anything. You can, as long as your mother's a Jew, you're welcome in the synagogue, and you're a Jew, and it's an open discussion, and that's uniqueness. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I mean, it's good for me because I appreciate it, and because of that, there are actually a lot of Jews who are not that religious because they're still Jews, right? It's not a club where you have to believe in order to belong to the club. No, it's an ethnicity. Your mother's a Jew, you're a Jew, right? So that's important to recognize, because people bring up ideological arguments when they're like making excuses. They want to make excuses for like the hatred towards Jews, and they bring up ideological arguments. None of that holds true. Jews are persecuted for being born Jew, not because of what they believe, right? So that's really important to understand. And the second thing, in order to understand where we are in history with all this, I'm going to share my screen. We need to look at the history, because this is important. This is not just to try and shove historical Jewish persecution in everyone's face. It actually pertains to where we are right now, and I'm going to explain why. So in medieval Europe, and this specifically about European Ashkenazi Jews, but also Sephardic Jews, which are the Spanish Portuguese Jews. So I'm going to read some of this. Religious attitudes were reflected in the economic, social, and political life of medieval Europe. In much of Europe during the Middle Ages, Jews were denied citizenship and its rights, barred from holding posts in government and the military, and excluded from membership in guilds and the professions. To be sure, some European rulers and societies, particularly during the Middle Ages, afforded Jews a degree of tolerance and acceptance. So obviously the persecution was up and down and varied in different places. It wasn't like constant, so I don't want to pretend like Jews were constant. I'm not victimizing. I'm not trying to be a victim here. I'm just trying to explain where we are today, right? So there was mixed discrimination. It was up, it was down, it was, some places it was more. All right, so degree of tolerance and acceptance. Thank you. They granted us a degree of tolerance and acceptance. All right, and this is not unusual. I don't want to make it seem like, some people are like, well, the Jews were never tolerated. Everyone hated the Jews. Well, guess what? Everyone hates everyone. And I've said this before. Different religions don't like each other. You go to the Middle East, it's a monolithic culture. It's either, and even the different, Muslim sects will fight against each other, but they certainly are pretty intolerant to Christianity and Judaism. Basically, there are none. There's a small pocket in Iran of like 10,000 Jews. Other than that, there are no Jews in the Middle East, except for Israel and perhaps, I guess, in the United Arab Emirates, which is a more modern country. But I mean, Pakistan and Bangladesh and India, they separated because Muslims and Hindus. Okay, so it's you go to China, they're gonna persecute the Uyghur Muslims, right? People do not like mixed cultures, right? That's normally the way it goes, and to integrate cultures is a difficult task. Look at Europe and the Muslims that they imported there. It's difficult. It's not easy. Here it's when we get the Latin Americans, Mexicans, whatnot in America, at least most of them are Christian or Christian tolerant, right? It's not like we're importing a different religion. So if you import a different religion, it's a lot more difficult, right? So that's the main thing. So I mean, I just wanted to dispel a lot of ignorance and a lot of bad arguments that people are making. Oh, people don't like the Jews. Why is that? It's because different religions never get along. That's why. Yeah. So, they want to make excuses for Jew hatred. And that's really, really distasteful. It's really awful. Like, these are people who have no empathy, no compassion. They just want to be like, oh, it's okay to hate Jews. It's okay. What Hitler did is cool. So, yeah. All right. Jews facing an unchanging, unsettling manifestation. All right. In 1096, however, Knights of the First Crusade unleashed a wave of anti-Semitic violence in France and the Holy Roman Empire, including massacres. All right, so that's not the point of all this, but that did happen. Unfounded accusation of ritual murder and host desecration, and the blood libel, allegations of Jews sacrificing to Christian children at Passover to obtain blood for unleavened bread. Yeah, the blood, that was an excuse. Propaganda, the Nazis used that. So I'm just going to skip over some of this. Another instrument of the 12th century anti-Semitism, compulsory yellow badges that identified the wearer as a Jew was also revived by the Nazis. So that's an older practice that the Nazis readopted. The practice of segregating the Jewish population of towns and cities into ghettos date from the Middle Ages and lasted until 9th and early 20th century in much of Europe. So the early Jews were not like rich, powerful, elite like they have the image of today. That's still a myth, but I'll get to As European commerce grew in the Middle Ages, some Jews became prominent in trade, banking, and money lending. And Jews' economic and cultural success tended to arouse the envy of the populace. This economic resentment, allied with traditional religious prejudice, prompted the forced expulsion of Jews from several countries, regions, including France, England, Germany, Portugal, province, and the Papal States, whatever there. Intensifying persecutions in Spain culminated in 1492 in the forced expulsion of that country's large and long-established Jewish population. Only Jews who had converted to Christianity were allowed to remain, and thus suspected of continuing to practice Judaism faced persecution in the Spanish Inquisition. As a result of these mass expulsions, the center of Jewish life shifted from Western Europe and Germany to Turkey, and then Poland and Russia. See, the Jewish diaspora, as it's called, is a result of endless persecution, starting from the Romans, actually going way back before then. But Babylon and all that. But the Romans, and then it just kept going on. And one of the reasons that a 4,000-year-old religion only has 15 million people in it today is twofold. One, Jews have constantly been murdered, right? People love murdering Jews. They love killing Jews. Number two, Jews were constantly forced to adopt other religions, but whether it be Christianity or Muslim or perhaps other ones, I don't know the details of other than that, but a lot of times it was from Judaism to Christianity. That's why there's so few religious ethnic Jews today. Yeah, so those two things, murder and forced conversion. But this last part is important. But where they are needed, the Jews were tolerated. Living as they did at the margins of society, Jews performed economic functions that were vital to trade and commerce, because pre-modern Christianity did not permit money lending. This is something everyone forgets or conveniently ignores, however you want to put it, for interest. And because Jews generally could not own land, Jews played a vital role as money lenders and traders. Jews were forced to be bankers. Everyone thinks Jews are greedy and it's all about the Khazarians and it's all this stupid, conspiracy stuff. And believe me, I'm not against conspiracy. I love conspiracies. I'm all about them. A lot of them are very accurate and true. Some aren't. Some are ridiculous and hateful, right? Christians were not allowed to lend money. They were against it, but they were allowed to borrow money. Do you see how that works? Money lending is bad, but we can borrow money. And, some people are like, well, the Jews invented usury and that's what enslaves humanity. All right, figure out a better system. I dare you. How else are you going to lend money and make it worth your while, right? You have to charge interest. Otherwise, nobody would do it. Like, if it's okay, if it's worthwhile to lend somebody $10,000 and then 5 years later you get $10,000 back, do it. That's a stupid move. Nobody would do that. It would never happen. Nobody would ever be borrowing money that way. Why? Because inflation, number one. Number two, it has to be worth your while. There's no incentive to do that to anyone. Number three, because nobody makes a living off of charity. You can't make a living off charity, mind you. Nobody's doing that, right? If it was good, if Christians had a better way of doing it, they would do it, but they don't do it. They're just hateful, spewing lies and be like, Jews invented usury. Oh, figure out something better then. All right, and the third thing is risk. There's a chance you might not get your money back. So all those things have to factor in. Therefore, that's why everyone who practices money lending charges interest. That's the only way we can do it, or some collateral, right? Something equivalent. Otherwise, there's no way anyone would ever lend anyone money, and therefore nobody could ever borrow money. So it's completely hypocritical and dishonest. These people are lying and they're hateful. They're hateful and they're guising it as like, oh, the Jews invented usury to enslave us. I agree that there's problems with the modern banking system, like big problems. And I've gone on about that, like independently. You can look at my videos. I've talked about that. So it's nothing to do with that. But there is no other way to lend money than to charge interest or some sort of collateral, right? Nobody's going to lend money for free. It just doesn't work that way, right? And the Christians forced Jews to become bankers because they couldn't own land. They couldn't join Christian guilds. So they became bankers. They became tradesmen and businessmen, right? And so on top of that, Jews is part of Judaism, the religious part, to study the Torah, right? So for those who are religious, the religious Jews were studying Torah, being bankers, being businessmen, and they were not doing anything physical. So take all that into account. Jews played a vital role as moneylenders and traders. Where they were permitted to participate in larger society, Jews thrived. During the Middle Ages in Spain, before the expulsion in 1492, Jewish philosophers, physicians, poets, and writers were among the leaders of a rich cultural and intellectual life shared with Muslims and Christians. In collaboration with Arab scholars and thinkers in the tolerant society of Muslim Spain, they were instrumental in transmitting the intellectual heritage of classical world to medieval Christendom. So I just need to clarify this. Reason we are where we are today, where there are a lot of successful, prominent Jews in all the upper echelons, whether it be media, Hollywood, banking system, basically all the executive branches, wherever there's, and the creative, like comedians, musicians, writers, and all that, because Jews became intellectuals. That's the point of this. Jews became intellectuals because they were prohibited by Christians, by Christian dogmatism, from owning land. So they couldn't be farmers. They couldn't work the land. They couldn't develop their bodies, their muscles, and they couldn't join guilds. Therefore, they couldn't learn crafts and trades. In other words, they could not work with their bodies. Jews were prohibited from doing all the things that make them physically strong. Instead, they had to work with their minds. Now, there's this thing called epigenetics. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's this idea that when you do things over generations, that the following generation and the following successive generations develop a proclivity towards that. And we know that's true because different groups, like if you look in the health or medical field, different groups are more susceptible to different diseases, right? So how does this happen? Well, food and habits, lifestyle, less physical, more intellectual, or more physical, different foods, different habits over time. That's epigenetics, right? And the same thing happens with physicality or intellectuality. If you study, like if you get like a group and you teach them and they're just all like studious, and there's nothing going to prohibit the mental development in their diet or environment, they're going to become more intelligent over time, because that's the way epigenetics works, right? So Jews were forced to become the intellectuals of society, right? And so now you have a group who, by Christian dogmatism, are more one-sided towards the intellect, right? Think about how many Jews are in sports. How many Jews are in basketball? Guess who's in basketball? Guess. I mean, by a large majority, it's Black people. And that's just a fact. It's just, we can't change that. We just, and we'd be foolish to not acknowledge that, because epigenetics, right? But it doesn't work the other way around. You can't say because somebody's Black that they'd be good at basketball. It's just so happens that there's a higher probability that Black people will be good at basketball. And we even made a movie about it. I mean, it shouldn't have been tolerated, but White Man Can't Jump, that was a movie. That's a racist title, to be honest. You can't say that like in any other way. Like, I don't know. I don't even want to go down that, but just, put in a different race or ethnicity there and different verb, it's, it gets really ugly, right? So any case, epigenetics is important. Different people have, why do Chinese people always win the math competitions, right? It's epigenetics. Okay. So and this is to kind of show that there's not some sort of agenda or conspiracy to install Jews at the executive level, right? And to have power over others. That's absurd. You take any Jew who has reached the top or is in a powerful position and look at their life. They went to school, they studied, they were smart, they got good grades, they were, studying a lot, they were, developing their intellect, and they were good at it, and they climbed the ladder, and that's how they got there. Every single time you'll find that. There are people who are placed, but it's not just Jews. I mean, that happens with every different group. Sometimes like you have like, you know, the CIA or some other powerful organization putting in people in certain positions because they're willing to do whatever kind of, you know, agenda that the CIA or whatever group wants, and that happens, right? But the vast majority of Jews get there by their own efforts, right? And you can't fault them for that. You can't fault anyone for doing things well, right? You can't fault, you know, a black person for being really good at basketball and making millions of dollars, right? Or, you know, or Kanye West, who we're talking about, yay, for being, you know, a super talented musician. I'm not going to deny him that, right? And I'm not going to deny his creativity and what he's good at, right? So in any case, you know, and not only that, so if you take all these Jews who are in their positions of you know, power or money or whatever in the top of the executive corporate world, it's still only a very small percentage of Jews. Most Jews are normal people. Like I've said before, I'm at the bottom of the barrel. Like I have like zero money and zero power and zero influence. I like to think that I'm intelligent in ways, other ways like astrology and my knowledge of food and spirituality and things like that. But I mean, that's by no means unique. There are plenty of people who are also similar and far better than me, right? I don't claim to be the best at anything. And most Jews are just middle of the road. The proof is that Israel does not have the highest GDP. It does not have the highest per capita GDP, and that's the only Jewish nation, right? And so yeah, Jews on average are more intellectual. We'll give them that because you have to. How can somebody with a who represents a very, very tiny percent of the population achieve a very high percentage in corporate executive leadership everywhere, right? And then also like, you know, music, arts, you know, comedy, show business, all that. Like also Jews, like, you know, take Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen. These are two of the most well-respected writers, musical writers ever, right? So in any case, it's because epigenetics, Jews develop the intellect over time, not because Jews are greedy and there's a Jewish banking conspiracy or anything like that. I mean, they're the Rothschilds, you could say that, but that didn't happen on its own. It grew out of this, you know, Christian dogma that Christians are not allowed to lend money and only Jews are. So therefore, which is, I mean, looking back, like hindsight's 2020 is kind of like, that was kind of a big mistake for the Christian. They lost out on the, you know, that opportunity, handed it to the Jews based on their own dogma, right? But it's what happened, and it's nobody's fault. That's the way it happened. Jews became bankers, and then their kids became bankers, and then their kids became bankers. I mean, that's the way it happened. Once you start to develop money, you keep it in the family. Every family does that. We have like the royal family who does that, right? All the royal families who do that, and all the, you know, everywhere in the Middle East, Europe, Asia, everyone who has wealth and power, they're going to hold on to it if they can. That is just human nature, right? So, all right. So the reason I just want to say, so there's no conspiracy. And the other thing is that like somebody like Kanye West thinks it's like Jewishness. He always says the Jewish media. It's not the Jewish media. Number one, he's ignoring all the non-Jews in the media, and there are plenty of them, right? Okay, maybe there's overrepresentation of Jews in the media. I haven't counted, but maybe let's say there are. It's not Jewishness that's running the media. It's individuals, and they will all think different things. They all have different thoughts, right? They all have different ideas. They all have, some are religious, possibly, I don't know. Some are probably not religious, right? Some have this idea, some have that idea. Some believe in free speech, some believe in, you know, tyranny and dictatorship, right? There's all different kinds. And maybe there's there's this stereotype that Jews are more like Democrat, liberals, right? Maybe a lot of them are, but not all of them. Certainly not all. I'm one of them who's not. Like, I think it's horrible. Like, and I'm a Jew. You know, both my parents are Jewish, right? So these stereotypes are harmful, and they don't help, and they're just ignorant, and they represent a small mind, right? We have to look at the nuances. There's no more of a Jewish conspiracy to, you know, rule the media and control the media than there is a black conspiracy to control the game of basketball, right? Like this insanely stupid. Or hip hop, like, oh, there's a black conspiracy to no. Or I heard like Jewish privilege. Okay, let's apply this. If you're black, then you're automatically good at basketball. If you're black, you're automatically good at rap and hip hop, right? You'd be a good rap star if you're black. That's stupid, right? And it doesn't work that way. You can't go backwards. Just because there is a higher representation of Jews in the executive field, that doesn't mean all Jews are, automatically, or that we just join the Jew club and then the other Jews are going to pull us up into the ranks. That might happen sometimes with friends and family and all that, but that happens with that's just smart, right? To help your friends, to help your family, right? But it doesn't mean that somebody's going to be good at a particular role. They have to be intelligent. They have to be a good leader. If they're not a good leader, the business is going to fail. Businesses fail all the time due to poor leadership. So, I mean, it's the same with basketball. Like, you can't just be like, let's stick black people in basketball. No, black people have to be good at basketball. Or let's make them, you're black, you're obviously going to be a good rapper. Let's stick you in the rap game. No, you have to be good at it. It takes skill, it takes talent. And I'm just using that as an example because it is a parallel, right? Different people have different abilities. And that's why there's not many Jews in sports. Jews are notoriously less physical. That's changing somewhat, but can always change. You just have to focus. Like, you just have to consciously move into a different field. That's, Jews in Israel especially have made it a point to become very physically strong because they need to defend themselves because Jews were murdered, and we're just tired of being killed by stronger people, right? Who want to harm us. So that came out of necessity. And at the same time, people study and become smarter, right? That's the way to do it. So let's move into Kanye West. He said some horrible things lately. I stand by Balenciaga and denounce all witch hunts and a cancel culture. Jesus is king. Ending trafficking doesn't start or end with fashion campaign, for Christ's sake. Okay, I bring that up because I'm not going to air any of the clips that on Alex Jones where he praises Hitler like 4 times and the Nazis and says the Holocaust didn't happen, which, by the way, it happened. My grandparents were there. I grew up with the war stories. My grandmother's family, most of them died in the Holocaust. We have ample evidence, right? So this is outrageous. The rhetoric is extremely hurtful and divisive. It hurts my feelings, and I know it hurts a lot of other people's feelings. Some people have no empathy, so they don't want to. They want to make excuses, and they're like, "Oh, well, he said Jesus, so it's all okay." As long as you say Jesus, it cancels out all your bad doings. You can do whatever you want. Just say Jesus, and you're forgiven, and it's all good, and that's it. But it doesn't work that way. Like he's causing harm. He's hurting people. I know it's not like he's actually out there killing anyone. Thankfully, I don't want to misrepresent what he's doing. It's just words, and I know the old saying, "Sticks and stones can hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me." Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We used to say that as a kid, and that's true to some extent. But it's bringing up the memory of the murder, of the suffering, of the torture, of the enslavement. I mean, it was more than murder. It was like all the hatred. And yes, Jews were slaves, right? Jews were slaves this century in slave camps, right? Forced to work. That's enslavement. Starved to death. Beaten, right? Tortured. Discriminated, persecuted. Horribly so. And it was like a long process that got worse and worse and worse. And they through propaganda, they turned the public against the Jews. They said the Jews carry disease. They destroyed their businesses, destroyed their land, made them move into ghettos, took away their defenses, their guns, right? So there's this whole horrible situation. And I grew up with it because and I just want to explain this so that you can sort of understand, have a little bit more empathy over what it might be like. My grandmother would talk about her family who did not survive, who died in the Holocaust. and she would always get emotional, like tears would run down her face. And of course, like when you're talking about your family, your blood, your relatives, your friends, your everyone you know, you're getting murdered, right, and tortured, horribly so. It's very, and they barely survived, right? So it's like, and as a little kid, I picked all this up. I internalized it because I felt it. I saw them. I saw their suffering. It was they were like horribly traumatized by it, deeply, deeply traumatized. They were scarred deeply. They were paranoid. They would not trust anyone. They could not. They were successful. My grandfather was he made handbags, and he was very good at it. He was excellent with his hands. He was a Christian, by the way, but he was no less, had to pay for his crimes of marrying a Jew. There was a warrant out for his death, so he was equally hunted and equally traumatized by it. But and later they moved into real estate, but they cannot run a business and that involved anyone else because they didn't trust them. Every time they hired a manager, they were like, they're cheating us, they're lying, they're stealing. Like that always happened again and again and again. And I knew that something was wrong, something was off with them. But later I realized, oh, well, it's their trauma. They're paranoid, and that's epigenetic. I mean, that passes down through the generations. So I get it. Like I'm a little bit paranoid myself because again, epigenetics, and there's psychological studies that say trauma gets passed down from generation to generation, but everything gets passed down from generation to generation, right? Like the trauma, that was the whole point of me bringing up the Jews became intellectuals, because if you're Jewish, you're going to be a little bit more intellectual, just kind of automatically. It doesn't mean you're going to be better at things. It just means that the chances are that you're going to have a little bit more intellect, a little less physicality to be Jewish. And there's also certain diseases that come along with it. It's not like all wonderful, like you're going to be more prone to certain diseases as well, right? It's just the way genetics works. And it's not good or bad. It's just, that's the way it is. And, anyone can consciously change that. Just, whatever characters you want your kids and grandkids to have, start doing that. And then that will get translated into your kids and grandkids, right? So I don't know. I hope that clears up some of it. But let's look at Kanye West and try and understand a little bit maybe what's going on with him. First of all, I've already covered his astrology actually twice, but I mean, it's because it's come up again. We're going to look at it again. He has an extremely powerful Venus, right? And so he's an artist. He's got the Pisces moon in the 9th house, which is bringing in the religion, the philosophy. The Jupiter in Gemini is negating that, by the way. So he's not always. That's going to be like, he wasn't always religious and philosophical. He wasn't always like Jesus, 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 right? And that I suspect because Gemini just kind of like, Gemini's like flavor of the month kind of modality. Like they're just like whatever they're feeling in the moment, that's what they're going to go with. And I know I'm a Gemini, but he could drop that at any time. Like he could just be like, oh, that was then, now this is whatever's new, like, because Jupiter in Gemini is not religious. But so the religious thing is on and off for him. He's not always going to be like that. But what he always is this Venus in Taurus, the super strong Venus, because it's in Taurus, and it's got a mutual reception by exaltation with the moon, right? Venus is exalted in Pisces, moon is exalted in Taurus. So there's that. And then triplicity and term are also in Venus. So it gets, a little more subtle there, but that's why this Venus is so super strong. It's also angular. It's in the 10th quadrant, 11th whole sign house, but super strong Venus. What else is interesting is that it's conjunct Chiron. And if you notice, his style is so weird, right? Like he always wears these like big baggy clothes. I mean, that's partially Jupiter influence, but like he's always wearing something different, something absurd. And that's the Chiron. It's this heightened sense of beauty and artistry and fashion and creativity coupled with something very strange and odd. He wore this black mask covering his face on the Alex Jones show, which I don't know like what that was about. Probably because he knew he was going to say some very offensive stuff and maybe plausible deniability. Some people are like, are we sure that's that's not him? It's him. You can tell by his voice. You can tell by the whole, this ongoing. I covered this all, like, I don't even, it was like 2 weeks ago, like this attack on the Jews, because Harley Pasternak, his handler, his trainer, threatened him with a very offensive tweet. I agree that was horrible. He should get rid of him, never speak to him again. But it's not the Jews, and it's not Harley's Jewishness that made him do that. It's Harley's ignorance that, and whoever's he's, listening to, that made him do that, right? It's got nothing to do with Jewishness. But Kanye is not an intellectual. He's a creative, so he's confused, and he's taking it out on the wrong. He's basically, he's a Don Quixote, fighting the windmills delusionally, thinking he's, fighting dragons. Replace that with Jewishness. He thinks he's fighting the Jewish media, a Jewish power structure, when he's not. Like, he's hurting people, but there's no Jewish power structure collective in the media. It's not like the Jewish media. It's just people, some of whom are Jews, and they disagree with each other. And it's not a unification. There's no Jewish club. I mean, I hate to break it to you. It's not like that. There's no, like, it's, maybe a lot of the media are controlled, but it's not by the Jewishness. It's by the CIA. Like Operation, what's it? It's not Operation Paperclip. Operation Mockingbird. That's the one where the CIA goes and says, okay, you have to report this and not this. And there's a lot of documentation to that, right? But it's not the Jewish media. If it's controlled media, it's because the CIA controls it, right? So, it's very delusional, and that's a strong Pisces quality. Obviously, Pisces is very creative, but also very delusional potentially. It's also Mercury in Taurus, and I have Mercury in Taurus actually, like, by 1 degree. So I mean, that's me and Kanye have in common. My son is actually 2 degrees from Kanye, so pretty similar. I can understand this. Mercury in Taurus just wants to beat you over the head with their opinion. They really do. It's like a caveman with a big club, and just be like, this is it, believe that this is my idea, like, this is my opinion. Like, I have some self-awareness, so I try and, like, soften it, but there's something very satisfying just being like, no, you're wrong, this is it, and we're not changing, this is it. Like, I don't care. Like, try me, fight me, I don't care. This is the way it is. That's Taurus. Taurus is stubborn. Taurus is a bull. Taurus is not changing its mind. He's doubling down. Like, he thinks he's like, the Jewish power structure is trying to control him, and he's doubling down. He's like, no, I'm going to go even farther. Praise Hitler and the Nazis. I'm paraphrasing. I mean, I'm not paraphrasing. Well, I'm, caricaturizing. Anyway, I'm not praising Hitler and the Nazis, just to be clear. Also, Saturn in Leo, and I have Saturn in Leo. I mean, like, Kanye has a lot of similar qualities to me, but I mean, I have a Virgo moon, so a lot more analytical, logical, and less creative, But Saturn in Leo is kind of a tyrant, and this is in the second house, dealing with his voice, dealing with what he says. And again, because Leo is the king, Leo is the royalty, the ego, the pride. Saturn is the law, the structure, the discipline, the authoritarian. And so Saturn in Leo can be kind of a tyrant. It's combining that kingship, the king with the lawmaker, right? And then you have, like, ego and pride with the law, and it's a bit much. Saturn doesn't function very well that way, because it's too hard, too strong. Saturn in Aries is also kind of tyrannical, right? He also has Mars in the 10th, and Mars in the 10th, especially in Taurus, is a fighter. I have Mars in the 10th, not in Taurus though, but Mars in Taurus can be like a bully. They're very, they're either subdue their anger so that they don't rock the boat, or if they're gonna fight, it's gonna be, I mean, all the stubbornness with Taurus, with the anger and aggression of Mars. It's a fierce combination, Mars and Taurus. It's not super easy, like either way, like whether they're just going to subdue their anger or really fight, like it's not great because it's just too much. There's no sort of middle ground. There's no happy medium. That's why it doesn't do its opposite. It's in detriment, right? Rules Scorpio, so it's not acting all that great, but it's not weak. I mean, it's weak in its inability to act appropriately or balance in a balanced way. But as far as its ability to fight, Mars and Taurus can fight very strongly. So yeah, I mean, that's just a review of his basic astrology, but let's pull in these are the current transits right now. We're getting a double dose of Neptune, so the delusion, the insanity, that's with his Pisces moon, he's getting a double dose of that. So the fictional elements, the fantasy, the delusion, that's all going to be strong, not only with Kanye, but with everyone, but especially with Kanye because he has the Pisces moon. So he's being more delusional than normal. So in just any case, if anyone wants to be like, no, he's rational, not from astrology, an astrological perspective. He's not. He has no Virgo. And he's got Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter doesn't do that well in Gemini. It's not logical, right? It's expanding his ego. It's exaggerating his ego. Gemini loves to exaggerate things. People think Gemini's a liar. It's not really a liar. Geminis are exaggerators, right? And sometimes it comes off as white lies. It's like, oh, I caught myself doing that the other day. I'm like, I never do that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, I do. But it's like, I never do that because I try not to. And then sometimes I let myself, but so it wasn't exactly accurate, but it's the exaggeration that kind of distorts the Gemini quality. And Jupiter conjunct the sun in Gemini is just it's going to blow up the ego, blow it out. And his ego is just off the charts. Like yay 20, he's not going to be president. He thinks he is, but he's not. And he had the audacity to ask President Trump to be his running mate. Like, oh my God. This guy is insanely, like, his ego is just, it's like a weather balloon or like a hot air balloon, right? Not only that, Mars in Gemini right now, like right above his sun, so he's all like aggressive and bloated, his ego, right, and delusional and fantasy, right? Uranus is in Taurus, so it's Uranus is going to radicalize his Mercury and his Venus and Mars and his Chiron, because that's what Uranus does. It radicalizes it. And so like his expression, his ideas, they're all going to be radical. They're all going to be off, out of bounds, pushing the envelope, just saying the most absurd, crazy things. And guys, it's not going to get better for a while. So we're going to have crazy Kanye for a little while because Mars in Gemini, Neptune in Pisces, Jupiter in Pisces, Uranus in Taurus. Uranus in Taurus is going to stay there until 2025. So Uranus in Taurus, he's just going to get more radical with stuff he says and his ideas. And it's not going to work well for him. He's going to ruin his career. Nobody's going to turn off everyone or most people. I mean, he'll probably still have a career because he's super successful, but it won't be nearly as big as it is now. And he's going to pay a hefty price. He's already gotten booted from Twitter. That Elon Musk made the call, and some people are like, "Oh, you should just allow everyone to say anything." And that's I don't think I would, because first of all, we have to not allow some things like nudity and pornography. Has no place on Twitter, right? We don't walk around naked, and we don't have sex in public. You can't have sex in a public platform. You can't have pornography, and therefore, there has to be a decision-making process, a human decision-making process that weighs each scenario and sees what, if Hitler was on Twitter, like, lying about the Jews, calling for, the murder of Jews, I would also be like, I think we should remove him. That's really crossing the line. So there has to be a human behind these decisions, not just like some robot or blanket rule, so that's his decision, and I'm okay with it, because I think he's rallying up the haters and really offending people, because it's he's trying, and he's intentionally trying to hurt people. I know some people are like, oh, he's insane, we should pray for him and stuff like that. You can pray for him, but we can't tolerate this kind of hateful rhetoric. I'm all for free speech, right? But I'm also not for rallying up people to hate on Jews more, which it seems to bring emboldening the hateful people, and there's a lot of hateful people. So I don't. I mean, yeah, it's a tough call, but somebody needs to make the call, right? And so there's that. I want to bring up another thing. This is his solar return chart for this year, June 8th, 2022, right? And in his this is a predictive technique that I use for yearly predictions to see how a person's year is going to go. And you look at the yearly profection, and then you look at the ruling planet in the natal chart and in the solar return. So he's in his yearly profection. And for those who don't know, yearly profection means each year gets a house, a whole sign house. So like year 0, when they're born, is the first house. Year 1 is the second house, and it goes from birthday to birthday, and you just count. And so if we count, he's in his 10th house Aries perfection. So just on that alone, we could say that this is a year for public recognition for Kanye, because Aries is 10th whole sign house, MC in Aries. A lot of attention, a lot of fame, a lot of recognition, a lot of career opportunities this year for him. Mars is ruling Aries, and so Mars naturally also is in his 10th house in Taurus, but in the solar return, Mars is in Aries. So this is a very aggressive year for him, a very public and aggressive year. Mars in Aries, Mars in domiciles, and the 10th house. Mars is super strong in his yearly profection, conjunct Jupiter in Aries and Chiron in Aries. So there is a lot of fight, a lot of public fight, a lot of public recognition, a lot of aggression. Mars in Aries is the most intense fighter, right? Of all. I mean, it's super quick to act. It doesn't last long. It's like a fierce explosion, right? Mars in Capricorn is a lot more controlled, a lot more, they're going to have like a plan of attack or whatever. They're going to be able to have discipline and authority and leadership in the way they go about it. Mars in Scorpio, similar. They're going to be more plotting and psychological and vengeful. Mars in Aries is just like, pow, man, like right in the face. Don't waste any time. Like, if it gets going, it's just that quick. Mars in Aries, and it's fierce, it's fast, it's hard, and it's usually for the knockout, right? So this is a hard-hitting, aggressive year for Mr. Kanye West. And Mars is a functional malefic. Mars is not especially in a daytime chart, if we're bringing classical astrology, Mars is the most difficult planet, the most harmful, the out of sec malefic, it's called. And so Mars is going to do the most damage to him, to his person. It is ruling the 10th house, so his public image is going to take a beating this year if he's not careful, which he's not being careful. It's also ruling his fifth whole sign house. So kids, it's not good for his kids, not good for his relationship with his children, with his creativity, 5th house. With his fun and games, he's not going to have fun, and he's not going to have fun with the damage he's doing, right? So he's hurting himself. He's hurting his public image. He's hurting his relationship with his kids, his custody battles, his creativity, his enjoyment, his romance. He's really doing damage to himself and to a lot of people, especially the people who personally feel this. For Jews especially, right? The Jews who have a personal connection to the Holocaust. He denied the Holocaust. He praised Hitler. He praised the Nazis, and he's been bashing the Jews nonstop. And people are just like, I really don't like that some people are making excuses for him. He also defended the pedophiles of Balenciaga. So he's really digging his own grave, and there's no excuse for that. I really, and he's bringing up like the Bible, and we gotta love everyone. We gotta love everyone. First of all, he's being hateful towards Jews. I mean, that's painfully obvious to anyone who's honest. Second of all, no, you can't support hateful actions. You can love somebody but not love what they're doing, right? People in their basic nature as human beings, we're nature, we're products of nature. We're all good, essentially, in the core, but we can follow very bad ideas, and that needs to be called out. You cannot endorse and support bad ideas, because then you're complicit in them. If somebody's murdering people, somebody's raping people, hurting people, enslaving people, torturing people, doing all kinds of horrible stuff, you have to call that out. You can't just say, oh, love everyone, including all the worst. You can love them, but hate the things that they do, hate their ideas, the ideologies, the evil, path that they're following. And you need to discriminate and have discernment. I know discriminate has a bad connotation, but I mean discernment, being able to decide what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is worth supporting, what is worth condemning. Condemn what is worth condemning, support what is worth supporting. We don't hate people's basic nature, not even Hitler, but we hate what he did, right? And that's the difference. He's a human being, and so all human beings are born the same way, right? Hitler wasn't born a bad person. He just followed a very bad path, right? And maybe that was his karmic destiny. I don't know. I'm not gonna make that call, but we have to call out the bad things that people do. Otherwise, we're complicit, and we're part of their. And then nobody wants that. Nobody wants their kids harmed. Nobody wants their people harmed, their people enslaved, tortured, murdered, all that stuff. That's basic human nature, right? So everyone understands this if we're honest with ourselves. That's the key. You have to be honest with yourself in order to empathize and to understand why this is wrong, why this is hurtful and harmful and divisive, and should be, talked about and pointed out. This is not good what he's doing. Right. And a lot of people get it. I don't mean to say that most people do get it. Most people fully understand and are right there, with me and all the other people who are horrified by this. But some people are making excuses for him, and that's not right. Like Jesus was not like all about, blind love and light. Like, he'll flip the tables if you're doing wrong. Like he'll divine anger, right, against that which is worthy of it, right? It's not that we just blindly accept everyone, just love everyone no matter what they do. Yeah, you can love them, but hate their thoughts, hate their actions, hate their deeds, hate what they stand for in their ideology, like, child abuse, child rape, Satanism, human ritual sacrifice, child trafficking, child pornography, all that stuff is hideous. Or even with adult stuff like that, it's still pretty hideous. Or murder, mass murder, genocide, democide, all that stuff. There's so much worth, condemning and discerning, the good versus the bad, to put it overly simplistically. You guys get it. But so I think this is really interesting. Looking at both the transits and the yearly profection. 10th house Aries, Mars Aries, Jupiter Aries, Chiron Aries, and the damage that he's doing, the aggression and all that. Uranus and Taurus, everything Taurian is getting radicalized. People who have planets in Taurus are I feel it too. My Jupiter is right at 16 degrees Taurus, so I'm definitely getting a radical Jupiter this year. My belief system, my philosophies, going through the ringer, all that. So yeah, that's what's going on. That's the big news, the big story of today. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. That's it for now. And no matter what you believe, we don't need more divisive fundamentalism. I'm all for, inclusion, not dividing people by what we believe. Like, I don't like that when people are like, oh, this is the only way. And it's not just like one religion or the other. All the different groups tend to do that to some extent. Not everyone, but a lot of people within the various groups can tend to do that. And I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's good. I know people were just wondering, like, yeah, but this is like, this is different. God said this, and this is the way it is. And uh, sorry, I disagree. I don't think that's the way it is. And if you really open your mind to the way the world is and different belief systems, you'll see that there are many paths to God. There are many paths to heaven. There are many ways to spirituality and to enlightenment and to God and to peace and to the kingdom of heaven and all of that. There's no one way and only way. And if you don't do it this way, then you're wrong. And that's ignorant. I'm sorry, but it's just ignorance and small-mindedness. It's rocks for brains. So let's be open to different people's ways of finding their path through life, their religion, their philosophy, their belief systems. Let's not assert that we have the right way and all that. There are many ways, many paths. So guys, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you have not already. Leave a comment down below. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Unless you're saying something really offensive like, yeah, but Jews, blah, 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 blah. If it's offensive, I'm going to delete it. But other than that, have fun. Enjoy yourself. Book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. My email is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And I will see you again soon. All right, thank you.